Hello everybody, I'm Soppela. I want to welcome you to my master's thesis presentation about the topic Possibilities of Hydropower to Balance Wind Power on the Nordic Electricity Market. My supervisor in this work was Professor Sanna Syri, and as my advisor acted Dr. Ville Olkkonen. I'm from the Aalto School of Electrical Engineering, and this thesis was done with the support of the Department of Mechanical Engineering. A little bit background about the research. I had former studies in environmental engineering, making me interested about the energy sector. I started to look into the energy transition plans and strategies. Seemed to have a high lean towards increasing wind power production, and there has been a lot of discussion about how to balance this wind power intermittent production with the demand curve, and pumped hydro storage was one topic that was discussed. So I wanted to, through this study, see how would the pumped hydro storage capacity help with the interconnector stress that this high increase of wind power generation capacity might potentially cause. The materials and methods used in this work were mostly Emerald MATLAB model. It is a simulation tool made in Aalto University, made to simulate the decisions made by the generators according to spot prices. So basically to show that how many hours of which generation capacities are operational throughout the year. It is an hour-based calculation model, so shows the 1 hour resolution spot prices according to demand, and then generation conditions, and the resolution for the nodes is in the bidding area level. So all the Nordic electricity market bidding areas are considered as separate nodes, which are 18 in total. The simulation data is compiled from the SOE transmission cooperation scenarios from 2018. Those scenarios chosen that had the highest predictions of wind power in the Nordic market area. SOE grid development plans are also considered, looking 10 years forward in this simulation. Nordic national energy and climate plans are considered according to the projections of increase in electricity demand, and World Wind Europe scenarios are then used to get the rate of increase in wind power generation. 4 different scenarios were modeled. All these scenarios had similar demand curves and similar production generation mixes, and these were taken from the 2016 statistics. Some common changes to all scenarios were that there was some addition of nuclear power in Finland, some reduction of nuclear power in Sweden, and the hard coal in Finland was replaced with wood chips. On top of these common changes for the 2016 figures, scenario 1 had 9.2 gigawatts addition in the Nordic wind power generation capacity. In scenario 2, we had the same addition of 9.2 gigawatts of wind and also 10 gigawatts of pumped hydro storage capacity. And all this wind generation capacity is distributed quite evenly around the Nordic electricity market area. But 10 gigawatts of pumped hydro storage capacity is all built in bidding areas NO2 and NO5, because the literature research showed that these areas would be the most potential area for such development. In scenario 3 we have 27.6 gigawatts addition of wind power in Nordic electricity market area. Scenario 4 we have the same addition of wind power and 10 gigawatts of pumped hydro storage capacity. So this was aim of these figures was to show how much different additions of wind power affect the system, and then see in these scenarios would the addition of pumped hydro storage make a difference. And as a result, when we are observing the average system price, we see that the pumped hydro storage doesn't seem to make difference between low wind and high wind scenarios. Nevertheless, the difference between low wind and high wind scenarios is that with the larger increase of wind generation capacity, the system price will go down slightly. Other simulation results show that the average area price in most areas would drop already with low wind pumped hydro storage scenario related to the low wind scenario without pumped hydro storage. So these would be the scenarios 1 and 2. On the other hand, in the high wind scenarios, scenario 3 and 4, we do not see significant area price changes with the added pumped hydro storage capacity. This could be partially explained with the fact that in the high wind scenarios we have large, evenly distributed capacity of wind power that will cause surplus and congestion more, and thus makes the utilization of the very centralized pumped hydro storage capacity rather limited. As results of the simulation, we can see that the importing interconnectors start to experience rather high average utilization rates already in the low wind scenarios, especially in Finland and some parts of Sweden. The importing maximum capacity usage time gets especially high in the high wind scenarios in Finland and some areas in Sweden and Norway. When we are observing the exporting interconnectors from bidding areas, we see again rather high average utilization rates reaching above 40% in nearly all bidding areas. And especially in Norway, we see that at least the simulated increase in wind power generation in these areas would cause significant exporting interconnector congestion and trading constraints. Looking at the graph below, we see that the maximum capacity of the exporting interconnectors is at use almost 80% of the time of the hours of the year in Norwegian NO3 and NO4. So this is partly also explained with the fact that in 2016 there was not much wind generation capacity in Norway, and for this 2030 scenario we are the highest percentual growth in wind power generation is occurring in Norway, and also the 10 gigawatts of pumped hydro storage capacity in this simulation is planned in Norway. So there's high increase of generation capacity, and then not as many interconnector projects announced publicly yet. And coming back to our original topic, possibilities of hydropower to balance wind power in the Nordic electricity market, we can observe that according to the simulation results, the heavy increase in wind power generation will also create more need for balancing. And of course, interconnectors are a good way of balancing the generation and demand between different bidding areas. But according to simulation results in the 2019 grid development plan, is not sufficient yet for at least this type of simulated generation distribution. Adding the 10 gigawatts of pumped hydro storage capacity in bidding areas NO2 and 5 is a very centralized solution, but seems to generate an overall price benefit in most of the bidding areas. And this can be observed in the low wind scenarios, between low wind scenarios 1 and 2, where in the first one we add 9.2 gigawatts of wind, and in the scenario 2, on top of that, also 10 gigawatts of pumped hydro storage. And we can see that in this comparison, the bidding area prices drop. But when we observe the differences between the high wind scenarios 3 and 4, where on the other we add nearly 28 gigawatts of wind, and in the scenario 4 also 10 gigawatts of pumped hydro storage, we observe no significant changes. And this could be due to the fact that with a lot of surplus wind production already in the neighboring bidding areas, there is slightly less need for this balancing, but also the transmission network in these high wind scenarios are so congested on the pumped hydro storage bidding area nodes and their neighboring nodes that this creates a bottleneck that to optimize the use of the pumped hydro storage. So to get maybe more realistic results for this type of development, this simulation should still be run with different transmission interconnector capacity models as well. Unfortunately, these simulations were outside the scope of this work and the allocated time, unfortunately. The simulation results also show that the increase in wind power generation will reduce the average cost of electricity, even with the experienced congestion, and how this would be economically optimized in terms of transmission investments and wind power generation allocation in different areas is another topic. But this simplified version seems to lower the consumer price with higher share of wind power generation. And as a note also that yes, how the wind power generation is distributed and actualized, the investments are actualized, that will significantly contribute to the fact that which interconnectors will go through the most stress. So thank you very much for your attention. This thesis will be made public. If you have any questions or comments about it, feel free to contact me. I want to thank Aalto very much for all the enlightening information I have received from the great people in here. I hope to get the chance to serve in making our energy system cleaner, safer, and cheaper for everyone. And let's see what this year brings along. Peace.